Car doors thudded shut in the gravel drive, and laughter spilled out of the farmhouse like a wave that didn't care who it carried with it. Music hit the walls hard enough to rattle them, and the place was already packed with people crowding the kitchen, the living room, and the steps leading down to the yard. Alonzo Brooks moved through the doorway with his friends, doing what he always did when dropped into a room full of strangers. He smiled, nodded, and tried to blend in without shrinking. He didn't know many people in La Cygne, Kansas, but he figured a party was a party. You talk, you drink, you stay with your group, and you go home. It didn't take long for him to realize he stood out in a way he hadn't expected. Some heads turned for longer than they should have. A few voices shifted tone when they spoke near him. The first racial slur came low and casual, tossed from someone who acted like it wasn't meant to land. Then another. Not shouted, not argued, not even disguised, just spoken like it was normal. Alonzo's expression changed only slightly, but the people who knew him could see when he forced calm over discomfort. He edged closer to the friends he came with. He stuck to familiar faces. But the longer the night went on, the more the room felt split between people having fun and people watching him with intent. Near midnight, the party thinned into the type of chaos where groups drifted out at different times, mistakes were made, and nobody kept track of who still needed a ride. One friend left early. Another thought someone else had Alonzo covered. Someone else believed he had arranged his own way home. None of the explanations lined up cleanly. The only clear point was that the car he arrived in eventually pulled away without him. A witness later claimed they saw Alonzo walking along the gravel road near the house after he left the party. That moment, him walking away alone into the dark Kansas countryside, was the last verified sighting of him alive. When morning came and he didn't return home, panic formed fast. Alonzo wasn't someone who stayed out with no word. His mother, his siblings, his friends, they all knew something was wrong. Calls shot out in every direction. People retraced plans from the night before, replaying who said what, who left when, who might have seen him last. And then came the question that no one had an answer for. How did everyone drive away without making sure he got home? His family drove straight to La Cygne. They walked the area surrounding the farmhouse and followed the road where he was last reported. They looked along the ditches and the thickets that bordered the route. They knocked on doors. They asked questions that were met with shrugs, vague answers, or flat avoidance. They called law enforcement, and the official search began. Multiple agencies combed the fields, creek banks, and wooded areas. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers spaced themselves out and moved in slow lines through thick brush. The creek near the party house, Middle Creek, was searched repeatedly. Despite everyone's certainty that the answer had to be close, nothing surfaced. Day after day, the family waited by their phones, dreading the ring but needing it. Weeks passed, and every theory that circulated made less sense than the last. He wasn't the type to run away. He didn't have enemies waiting to catch him miles from home. The only consistent truth was that whatever happened to him happened within a narrow timeline and in a place that wasn't speaking. On May 1st, 2004, nearly a month after he vanished, the Brooks family organized a large, focused search with volunteers. They returned to the creek area again, even though it had already been checked. They walked as a group, calling his name, refusing to accept the idea that he could be somewhere else entirely. They found him in the creek bed. The shock of it hit harder than the discovery itself. The spot wasn't miles away. It wasn't hidden deep in the woods. It was right near where everyone had been searching since the beginning, close enough that the only thing harder to accept than his death was the idea that no one had seen him earlier. His body lay in plain view, in an area multiple searchers had already walked through. An autopsy couldn't establish a cause of death. Too much time had passed. Too many possibilities had been erased by exposure. There were no immediate signs that pointed to a clear explanation. And with that vacuum came more questions. If he had simply fallen or drowned, why wasn't he found for nearly a month in a low, open area? If he had been placed there later, who had access, and who was protecting them? Rumors sparked and spread. The only thing the family knew for certain was that the circumstances did not match the silence they were being handed. The investigation dragged for years with no arrests, no charges, and no decisive answers. His parents and siblings kept pushing, refusing to let his name fade into a cold case file. They spoke publicly. They attended events. They kept his photo circulating. They kept saying his name until the people who were avoiding it could no longer pretend the case was forgotten. In 2020, federal authorities reopened the investigation. They issued a reward for information. They re-interviewed witnesses. They pressed harder than the original inquiry ever had. The renewed attention forced a second look at everything that had been dismissed or overlooked. The inconsistencies around the original searches, the conflicting stories at the party, the lack of cooperation in a small community, all of it returned to the surface. In July 2020, Alonzo's body was exhumed for a new forensic examination. The process was painful for the family, but it was their only hope of getting a real answer. The Armed Forces medical examiner reviewed the case and issued a conclusion that finally shifted the investigation out of limbo. In April 2021, the federal report determined that Alonzo Brooks's death was homicide. The ruling didn't reveal who did it. It didn't map out the missing hours of that April night. It didn't identify who moved him or who kept quiet. But it confirmed what his family had felt from the moment he disappeared. He did not die by accident, and he did not place himself where he was found. The last hours of Alonzo's life remain locked in the same stretch of rural Kansas where he stood on a gravel road and walked away from a farmhouse full of people. The truth is still held by those who saw him, those who spoke to him, and those who know far more than they have ever admitted. Every year that passes tightens the circle of silence, but it also deepens the pressure on the few who carry the answers. One night, one house, one walk into the dark, and a recovery so close that it still forces the same question every time his name is spoken. How was he found where people had already searched, unless someone wanted him found only when it was too late? Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.